So while we're waiting for Mike, I was wondering if anybody heard anything about what President Biden said today at the White House. I know he was making a big World AIDS Day announcement, and I think it began an hour or two ago. So if anybody heard anything, what do you say?
Okay, we're going to try this again. Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry, everyone, for the technical glitch. We'll see if we can start again. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Khadija, and I'm so happy you have joined us today. I am the founder of RAHMA, which means mercy in Arabic. It's also the acronym for Reaching All HIV Positive Muslims in America, and also the founder of National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. And I'm so excited you're here today. I want to give you a background on why I became passionate about HIV and AIDS. When I was in college, I met a Muslim man living with AIDS. He had progressed to the AIDS stage, and I was studying to be a nurse at the time. And I worked in the hospital as a student nurse, and this man was my patient. And I learned so much from him. He told me how he felt stigmatized and not welcome in his own community because of the lack of education around HIV or AIDS. And the stigma he faced was so surreal. So he opened my eyes to what's going on. And I realized that I'd never actually had education on sexual health when I was growing up in my faith community, forget HIV or AIDS. And then I went back to my college campus and I met a friend who also was positive and opened my eyes to that could affect people my age as well. So I kind of organized a World AIDS Day week of awareness back in when I was in college, and I could say the year. And it really got me passionate about this cause. So I continue on to volunteer. And I decided to start RAHMA to hopefully address HIV and AIDS in the Muslim community, but it has since grown to address HIV and AIDS, gender-based violence, female genital mutilation / cutting prevention in all faith communities. And we started Faith HIV AIDS Awareness Day in 2017 because we realized that faith and HIV have a correlation. And unfortunately, people are stigmatized in faith communities on HIV and AIDS, and they leave their faith community because of lack of support and many other reasons as well. So we kind of wanted to bring a light and shed light on that aspect. So today we're here celebrating World AIDS Day, and we're going to present to you a documentary short film on people of faith, of different faith backgrounds, sharing their stories on HIV and AIDS, called My Faith, My Story. And it kind of uplifts people from the South that are sharing their stories. I think it's really important that we listen to this and hear these perspectives, because it's very important that we uplift people of faith. So many times they're often forgotten, and I think this is great. I'm really excited for you to listen to it and watch it. I'd love to hear your feedback. Please, please, please share with your family and your friends. Let's work together to make a difference in the lives of those affected with HIV and AIDS, and also a part of faith community. So thank you so much. Enjoy this event and have a great evening, a great morning, a great weekend, and a great day celebrating World AIDS Day. Thank you. Bye.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the southern region of the United States makes up roughly 40% of the U.S. population, but accounts for 45% of all people living with HIV in the country, and 51% of new diagnoses, more than any other region. Pew Research reports that Black Americans are the most religious racial ethnic group in the U.S. This includes Black lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex or asexual, and persons living with HIV/AIDS in the South who rely on their personal faith to navigate issues around health and wellness, but sometimes lack the support to safely explore the intersection between HIV and faith in their community. In partnership with Wake Forest University Gilead Campus Initiative, Southern AIDS Coalition, RAHMA, the United States Conference on HIV Faith Coalition, and National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, we invite you into a safe space for storytelling, where advocates, faith leaders, and people living with HIV address the challenges inherent in responding to the HIV epidemic in the Southern U.S. as people and communities of faith. This is My Faith, My Story.
His name is Abdul Alim Fahim Hassan, born in 1951 to parents who were heroin addicts. As a child growing up in that environment, he began using drugs at the age of 14. At 16, he started using heroin. By the time he was 25, he was a full-fledged addict that was in and out of prison. While doing a 12-year sentence, he learned he was HIV positive from using needles. He also embraced Islam, but he still had problems getting off heroin once released. He began to read and study everything he could on HIV. The doctor told him in 1994 he had about 5 years to live. In his heart, he knew better because of his faith. He felt like HIV was a blessing to him because it allowed him the opportunity to take a deep look into himself, even though he knew he didn't have the coping skills to live out there on his own. So he made a conscious decision to get help. He checked into the Ebony House Rehab Center to assist him with his drug and mental health problems. He graduated in 3 months and was blessed with a job in the outreach department for HIV. Praise God that this changed his whole life. As an HIV positive man and a Muslim, now it's about helping others to overcome the stigma and shame, and to be able to teach, educate, and inform others that HIV is not a death sentence. You have to take care of yourself and love God who created us. He hopes his story helps someone to live their life in the service of helping others. May God bless us all with peace and success in this life and the next. Amen.
My name is Nimara Kennedy, and I am a member of the Baha'i Faith, and also happen to work for a global nonprofit that focuses on addressing HIV and AIDS across our globe.
Hi, I am Chelsea Holland. I'm from Greenwich, Alabama. I'm working with Alabama Department of Public Health in the Office of HIV Prevention and Care. I am an Ending the HIV Epidemic Coordinator.
So I'm William Torres Fuentes. I'm originally from Puerto Rico and currently live in North Carolina.
My name is Shirley Salvage. I work at UAB 1917 Clinic as a coordinator of health education, and I am here to reduce the stigma and talk about what's going on in the South.
Karen Stanley, South Carolina.
Hi, Christopher Hamlin. I serve as chaplain and provincial education specialist at UAB's 1917 Clinic and also serve as pastor at Tabernacle Baptist Church here in Birmingham, Alabama.
My name is Jimmy Gibbs. I'm an ordained pastor in the United Church of Christ.
Carmarian D. Anderson-Harvey. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I serve as the co-minister for the National Office of Trans Saints of Affirming Ministries under the prelate bishop Yvette Flunder of TFAM. I also serve as the senior staffer, Alabama State Director for the Human Rights Campaign.
So my HIV story began, I was diagnosed in 2003. It was a very traumatic experience.
I'm from a very small community, rural community, population about 1,500. I was diagnosed with HIV in 98, so I've been living with HIV for 22 years now.
I found out in Puerto Rico. Coming from a Latino family, it was a huge shock for them.
So I remember when I, it disclosed my diagnosis to my grandmother, she said, we're going to get the pastor. We're going to get the pastor. He's going to come and pray for you. And he didn't come. He was like, we're going to pray for her. She needs to stay at home. We'll pray from her from afar.
I've been alienated because the pastor would say that you're not, welcome, or we don't discuss that around in here because we don't want people to be afraid of catching anything.
I am a fourth generation pastor. I knew going into the United Church of Christ and the Christian church, I knew that they were not open, affirming, and accepting.
So I developed fever. I felt that within the time of developing what we would call an acute HIV infection. And so 2 weeks later, I bought the home kit to check for HIV and tested positive. I called my physician and informed him of the results, which were confirmed, and since then. So I was diagnosed pretty early. I knew when I was exposed. And from there on, I've been taking anti-HIV medications.
Do you feel that faith is important to someone living with HIV, for them to have a healthy and thriving life?
Absolutely. I really like to think of it as the work that we're doing around health and wellness. And wellness encompasses the whole being. So if we are only looking at how we can address one aspect of the whole being, then it still means that there's fragmentation in the totality of the health and wellness of the whole being.
Faith to my HIV diagnosis is very important because, I have to lean on my faith to, to get me from point A to point B, because there are several different diagnoses that have come along since my diagnosis of HIV, even with my faith. I've come into mental health depression. There's been even stroke issues. There have been issues of people thinking that I didn't need to disclose my status.
Well, I came to the 1917 Clinic in 2002 with the express purpose of talking with pastors about what we can do to alleviate stigma as it relates to HIV and how we can be a more opening community to members of our congregation who probably were HIV positive, but because of stories similar to Shirley's, you had members who did not want to share or disclose their status for fear of being judged or even being put out of a congregation.
Share with us just a little bit about your thoughts around stigma and self-stigma.
So stigma for me, it's something that I live daily. And moving from Puerto Rico to North Carolina was a huge difference for me. For example, when I came to North Carolina, someone knocked on my door and from the health department asking, hey, you came to North Carolina, we have laws here in North Carolina, and we keep track of people with HIV, and that for me, that was kind of stigmatizing. We don't have that laws anymore in North Carolina, but I feel like I was doing something wrong, that I need to be kept guarded. And till this day, a lot of people feel like that, and that's why they don't get tested or they don't share their status.
I've learned that since I was diagnosed, that with my HIV in several different churches and faith-based organizations, that they're stigmatized and that they don't allow or tolerate people, or you can't even disclose and tell people your HIV status because they will shut you out.
So I didn't share my diagnosis until 2014. So I was isolated. I isolated myself from even going to school or getting into relationships. I mean, I isolated myself. I didn't want to talk about HIV. If I seen it on the TV or in a commercial, I would turn the channel.
My faith in the church was like, I was trying to find to where I could be accepted and would be accepted. And, the what ifs come up. What if happens when they find out your status and they're not going to want you there?
I grew up in a different country where we keep lots of things private, and certainly our HIV status. And that can protect us to a certain way, but it can prevent us from being authentic, and it may harm us in many other ways. I've struggled with being authentic much of my adult life because of that way of upbringing. And I wish that I were a little bit more open and more authentic with people.
That really made me feel like that, the church a place where you could always go for healing and prayers, that I wasn't accepted there anymore. And so I didn't go to church for a while. And it wasn't until probably about 3 years ago, I think, that I realized that I was really angry with pastors. I didn't I always find something wrong with them. And I'm like, okay, he's not going to accept me. So, and every time I would try to go to church, they would say, just tell us all your problems and tell us, your secrets. And I'm like, really? So that you can put me out?
As a hospital chaplain who dealt with people who lived with cancer, stigma is stigma. I've dealt with stigma with my mom, who just recently died with COVID with her roommate. It doesn't have to be HIV for stigma to come into your life and into your family and into your lives. But we as people of faith are all joined together now on this earth to deal with stigma of all kinds.
It's been a struggle dealing with that. I know I'm a religious person and I'm a Christian, and I just believe, I can get my praise and worship at home if need be, but, I still wish that, I would have got accepted.
As a Muslim, the most important aspect of being a Muslim is to be open to helping people have a better and stronger relationship with God, and having a hostile atmosphere that is unwelcome is contrary to that message.
And a lot of times, people really want somebody to talk to. They want to share their information, but they want to be able to trust that they're giving this information to someone and that they can really trust them with their heart.
The essence of what I really hear from my brothers and sisters that are living with HIV is just wanting to be loved, wanting to be honored, wanting to be respected, and wanting to be seen for who they are and not the virus that they're living with.
With my HIV status, I've been able to disclose to church members when I'm participating in church. Sometimes the look is of sadness because they don't understand how far we have come with medication and that we can live a normal life. And that's one of my goals, is to let them know, especially in the Latino community, that there's medication, that people should get tested, know their status, and live a healthy life.
When I came, to Birmingham in 1990, a lot of people were dying from HIV and AIDS-related causes. That doesn't happen now. I mean, the vast majority of people who contract HIV today, they're going to live to be old persons. And that, again, talks about how much progress has been made in this community because of science, because of research, because of healthcare providers and workers and everyone else who's across the spectrum who have given themselves to educating the community about HIV.
We do have medications that one can take to prevent having HIV. Yeah, so that is becoming part of one of my important messages to congregate.
When the need comes, how do we insert that, in such a traditional structure of a tabernacle? Well, there's always opportunities such as Sunday school, Bible studies, pastoral care, pastoral teachings, which is generally traditional in the South, somewhere between Thursday and Friday. There are opportunities. I mean, even how we as the persons of the gospel preaching a text, there are plenty of texts that we can incorporate to help reduce HIV. Sexually transmitted infections is a taboo in the Black church.
That is a message for me as a physician when I'm talking to medical students or residents, not to stigmatize their patients and whatever it is that they are looking into, because the society stigmatizes for many reasons.
Although you may think this is not happening in your congregation, based on what I was seeing at our clinic and in the community, this is what is in your congregation. And to be aware that you have members who have needs, but you cannot meet those needs, or the congregation cannot meet those needs, basically because of stereotypes, because of judgment, because of stigma. And people who were living with HIV had legitimate spiritual needs. They needed to belong to a congregation. They needed to participate in various ministries within those churches.
Being known and letting other people know that I'm living with HIV and that I'm healthy and that I'm able to worship and to love other people, that's what kept me going.
Oftentimes, a silent voice feels like that there is nobody else that's around. And so what we see is that we see high rates of suicide. We see sexual transmitted infections increasing in Black church, and specifically speaking about the Black church, because that's important. And what happens is that they die alone because we're not talking about it, because I heard the word, we cover it up.
I do worry about, I think now we can prevent HIV. The problem with HIV is a stigma that makes people not be open about their sexual life, and therefore makes them less aware of resources, preventive measures that can protect them.
While we're here on earth, it's our responsibility to resurrect people. And that means that we have to talk about HIV.
Our space is a faith institution. It's not good enough just to be a house of worship. That it needs to be a safe space that people from all backgrounds, no matter what their journey, no matter what their life experience, feel that they can come and get what they need.
We need to have support groups and even different churches and stuff to where we can reach out for community resources.
Building community engagement, we have to continue to do the work that all of us are called to do. Ministers are not the only ones that are called to do this sacred work. This sacred work happens to be all of our jobs. Those of us that are working in drug rehab, those of us that are working to help those find housing that is so hard.
The upliftment of the spirit, the upliftment of the mind, in tandem with continuing to support and love on to ensure that our brothers and sisters living with HIV are also doing all that they need to do to continue to stay healthy. And most importantly, or equally as important, is having that circle, having that tribe that is elevating and empowering the mind, the body, and the spirit.
And it's kind of what Shirley spoke on, trust. In the setting that I work in, sometimes you want things to move quickly, but it doesn't happen. I like to build those relationships. It takes a while. I get corrected. I get checked. I get told something new every day, but that's what I'm there for. I don't have that lived experience, but with empathy, I try my best to put myself in their shoes, and there's still something I can't do.
What type of work do you feel that the faith community could do to help the public health community and the HIV epidemic?
I think the faith community has a critical role in this work.
How can we do better about how we handle our crisis like this? How can we do better about reaching out to those in our faith community? We have to keep trying. This is a work in progress.
We got to stop limiting ourselves on what we're going to do to be innovative. If a pastor has to get up and make a sermon about it because it's happening in his or her community, do it.
I think that we have to stop focusing so much on what divides us and really focus on what connects us.
We all carry the message of love, and that's the beautiful thing.
I just think we need more pastors to step up and open their doors up. When they say the doors of the church is open, it should be open to all of us.
It doesn't mean you stop believing in what you're doing. It doesn't mean you stop doing the work that you're called to do.
I think for us as pastors is recognizing my limitations. I know what I'm good at doing, and I also know what I'm not good at doing. And if I can partner with someone who can do it better than I can, I partner.
For those leaders who are leading congregations, that's the senior pastor all the way down to the Sunday school teacher of all levels, get some professional development. It is important. There's a lot of tools out there to have conversation around HIV and religion and faith. And if you need that information, just seek for it, but make that part of your professional development. Oftentimes as those that preach the gospel, we have to continue to study, and because the trends change, the word of God is going to remain the same, but we got to know how to be able to expound on it where the listeners can be able to eat from it. I will also say for the pastors who do pastoral counseling, have a referral manual that actually have some health disparity referrals in there. Us who do pastoral care, a lot of times we're not licensed to diagnose, but we are commissioned to give the appropriate referral. And as a pastor, we can follow up with that member and to them, their client.
And I think that we have to recognize, and I really come from this from the Black experience, that the essence of any powerful and impactful movement throughout history, at least in the American history experience, has been stemmed out of the Black faith institution, whether it was the Black church or the Black mosque or what have you. And so I think we've got to go back to what we know. And I think that ripple effects also into, non-Black American faith experiences. And so I think we've got to go back to that core of really, again, not worrying about who someone is, not worrying about how someone contracted HIV, but recognizing that we are our brother's keepers. We are our sister's keepers, and that we've got to connect in a way as being spiritual beings, again, that are living this human reality and loving, empowering, and supporting each other in that journey.
So, final words, what would you like the people to hear from your heart? Be more open-minded to their members, and to certainly be less judgmental in the way they talk to members of their congregations and stuff like that.
I choose to not allow people to stigmatize me because, I am more than my diagnosis. HIV is just a thing to me. It's a regular part of everyday life.
I've learned through the years that I'm normal and I'm loved by God, and that's the thing that kept me going.
Once a year, you're going to open the door, you're going to allow us to come in and test your congregation, but after that, we don't hear from you until World AIDS Day comes around again. So every day is World AIDS Day.
It can no longer be taboo. It can no longer be hush hush behind closed doors. Talk about this at your dinner table, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Baptism Day, Lord's Supper, all of that Easter program. Get a speech together. We have to start incorporating this dialogue. It's relevant dialogue. And if the gospel is going to be relevant, then allow that to heal us and not allow a disease or an infection per se to kill us, because again, we are overcomers and this sickness is not unto death. There is a glory behind, because it didn't surprise our Creator.
Until we start these conversations and start having these experiences, we're not going to get far. So understanding that, yes, sex is a word, it's real. You're cringe when you say it, it shouldn't be that way.
You know, sometimes the faith community, particularly in the Black American experience, has gotten a bad rap around this work of really addressing HIV and AIDS and really addressing the issue of stigma. But I know numerous Black faith leaders across this country that are in the trenches, not only within their faith institutions, but also in the broader community, of really working hand in hand with public health leaders and community folks in their community to really address the issue of HIV and AIDS.
We're called, and I think that's the word that I want to use. We're all called to do this work. Continue the work that you do. In every community that you touch, someone sees the work that you do, someone sees the work that you're doing, and someone will reach out and touch you in some way and join forces with you to give you a lift. And that's what I want you to remember.
Go and tell the story. This is what HIV is about. This is what it's about. We all become ambassadors, and as a result of that, transformation is happening. It's taking place in all of our communities, and we celebrate that. Yet, there's still more work to be done, and we commit ourselves to the good work.
My faith, my story.
My faith, my story.
My faith, my story.
Mi historia, mi fe.
My faith, my story.
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 His faith, his story.
Their faith, their stories. And what powerful stories and testimonies they were. I can't wait to hear from some of the panelists to get their reactions from what we just saw together. But first, we will have a word from our sponsors.
We've placed so much attention in the modern West on freedom, on individuality and autonomy. And in the process, we've actually diminished some of the great ethical teachings of our faith traditions as it relates to what we owe the other. That's what social justice is about. It's about living our lives in such a way in our communities and structuring our society and world where we take care of the other.
At Wake Forest, we talk about our motto, Pro Humanitate, for humanity, so that our enterprise for educating is not just for the sake of learning. We are doing the work that we do here at Wake Forest for humanity.
HIV and AIDS is a human problem, disproportionately impacting the African American community. At Wake Forest University School of Divinity, we believe that Black lives matter, full stop.
We know that nearly half of new diagnosis for HIV occurs in the Southern United States.
I believe that communities of faith are central to helping change those narratives.
Part of our excitement about connecting with the Gilead Compass Initiative is this recognition that in the South, you cannot effectively address HIV and AIDS without thinking about faith communities.
Compass Initiative understands that if we really want to curb the negative impact of HIV and AIDS in the Southern region, that we have to take a multi-pronged approach. We have to engage with LGBTQ activist organizations. We have to engage with communities of faith. We have to engage with other health organizations, people who are doing the heavy work of human services.
We'll know we're making progress when we've eradicated the disease. We'll know we're making progress when transformative storytelling takes hold and faith communities are telling a new story and the disease is not stigmatized in the way that it is now. We will know that we are making progress when LGBTQ persons can live free and wholly in their faith communities without judgment and not have the need to be silent about who they are and who they love.
It doesn't matter your sexuality. It doesn't matter your class, whether one is a Christian, a Muslim, whether one's Buddhist. HIV and AIDS is impacting our community. When we're able to walk into any African American church in the South and see that they are addressing HIV and AIDS, doing testing, helping people with their medicine, when they're doing that in the same ways as they currently do diabetes screenings or blood pressure screenings right now in their health ministries, I know that we've made a difference.
Hello, my name is Daphina Ward, and I serve as Executive Director of the Southern AIDS Coalition. The Southern AIDS Coalition was founded 20 years ago with the mission to bring additional resources to the South, to build a stronger community of advocates, and to change the disproportionate impact of HIV on the region. In 2019, Southern AIDS Coalition partnered with more than 300 organizations, advocates, and leaders to found Southern HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. So annually on August 20th, we bring awareness to the disproportionate impact of HIV in the South. Appropriately, this year's theme, Support, Act, Change, pays homage to SAC's 20 years of service and is a call to action for the work that lies ahead. Work that we cannot do alone. That's why Southern AIDS Coalition and SHAD are proud to partner with RAHMA and National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day to continue the work of eliminating HIV-related stigma and discrimination, particularly in the South. The southern region of the United States accounts for the greatest number of people living with HIV in the whole country. Likewise, the South is considered the most religious region in the United States, with faith being a key driving force in people's life experience. We cannot end the HIV epidemic in the United States if we don't address the public health crisis of HIV in the South. And we cannot address HIV in the South without intentionally engaging faith communities. Southern Stories, 40 Years of Faith and HIV in Review does an excellent job of chronicling the experiences of people living with HIV, faith leaders, sexual and gender minorities, and people of faith and goodwill living in the South through documentary-style profiles that effectively explore these intersecting themes. Together, we must continue to create sacred space for storytelling because stories increase awareness, and awareness builds empathy, and empathy is the tie that binds us all. United, we are stronger. Together, we are powerful. We can end HIV in the South, one day, each year, until we find a cure.
Thank you to our sponsors and to our partners. And we continue to welcome and invite others who would like to journey in this work with us. We understand that this video that you just saw, this undertaking, is really just the beginning of a much larger platform that we hope to be able to expand beyond the South. And in order to do so, we will continue to need to grow and expand our partnerships and our sponsors. And so we give thanks for our partnership with Gilead Compass and the Wake Forest Faith Coordinating Center, and our partnership with the Southern AIDS Coalition. And we continue to invite sponsors and partners to journey with us as we do this work. Now, for the moment that I've been waiting for, and the moment that I hope you all have been waiting for, I'd like to invite some of the stars, if you will, that you just saw, sharing their stories in My Faith, My Story for a brief panel discussion so that you might hear from them firsthand their experience in being a part of this project, but also hear more about their experience in the South as people of faith and people who have been impacted by HIV and AIDS. And so at this time, I want to invite William Torres, Elder Kamarian D. Anderson Harvey, and Latifa Ali.
Saludos.
Hey, friends.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Excellent. I kind of feel like a fanboy a little bit. Getting to have you all on the couch, if you will, to talk about what we just saw and really process out loud the making of this documentary, your ability to be vulnerable in this way. I'm really interested just from each of you what your initial reaction is seeing the finished product. And just tell me a bit about your experience in being a part of this project at large. And so, William, we'll start with you.
For me, it was a pleasure being invited to participate. It was scary at the beginning because sharing my story of faith implies a lot of who I am. And I wanted to tell this, the reality of what I went through and how my family also supported me through the years. Faith and my family they were the bridge that I was able to navigate. And that's why I'm here today. It wasn't easy, but I think that there's always the common denominator is love and compassion and mercy. And that's what I keep saying.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Latifa, you were there in a unique role in that you were the voice for someone else's story. Tell us a bit about that experience and if at all you could relate to that story in your own personal life and your own personal experiences.
Yeah, it was very, it was actually pretty tough for me to do this, right? Because I'm telling someone else's story and it definitely hit home, but it was very important for this story to be told. So one of the leaders, he couldn't actually make it to tell his own story. So it was just an honor for me to be able to do it. We definitely needed his story out there, and I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was a beautiful experience of triumph also, just him going through what he went through and his struggles with drugs and things like that. And for him to overcome that and look at it as a blessing for him to change his life around. It was just a beautiful story. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to tell it. In my own life, I've had family members who actually died from AIDS. So it went from HIV to AIDS and they died. So there, I don't have any stories in my own family of the triumph part, right? It was, it didn't end up that way. So for me to hear that, it was just a beautiful thing.
Right. It's important to be able to follow up the trial with the triumph, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Elder Kamarian D. Anderson, you are really at the forefront of the fight against HIV and AIDS in the South. Tell us a bit about what that means for you as a Black woman, as a woman of trans experience, but also as a faith leader. Tell us about your experience in making this video and why it was important to you.
Yeah, I think you answered a couple of for my response. I think one, in this Southern reach, doing this work, we are dying here in the South. And if I have said a yes to my call, that's for me to be an advocate as well for my communities that I serve. And that's intersectional. I think the unique part of it, now that I've seen the finished product, is all the diverse voices that we heard. But more importantly for me, just to be included as a faith leader, but someone of the trans community, where we're often ignored when it comes down to anything as it relates for us to thrive and live. And so I was very excited about the final product and just participating, as a faith leader. As I said in the documentary, I'm a lifelong learner. And if anything, I want to be able to model that with my other colleagues that are leaders in their faith communities, that it is important for us to diversify how we are offering healing and how we're offering, as in my background, deliverance, all of that. And those are not harsh words. Those are words that we can tie the word of God, I believe, and wrap it around into what is killing us, the current events and so forth. And so I thought it was remarkable. It's challenging at times because every faith community talks about this differently. But if we learn anything from this video, there's a call to action that we must be intentional having these conversations in order for us to live. And I believe that if we do, as I said in the video, then we are responsible to resurrect our community in hope, knowing that this infection is not going to kill us or our community.
Absolutely. We already have some questions that are coming in the comments, but I want to continue this conversation before we engage some of those questions. William, one of the first things you said in your testimony was that being Latino, that your diagnosis came as a surprise for your family being from Puerto Rico. Could you give more context to that? Could you unpack that a bit more?
Yes. So I'm the oldest sibling, oldest grandson, and for them, when I came out, I told them that I was first I was gay, and then I disclosed my status. That kind of felt sort of like, oh, that's kind of a punishment. You came out, so that's something that eventually was going to happen. So it was kind of a surprise, but at the same time was kind of, for me, it was very painful. It was a very painful experience, and the help that I got from my family was the one that bridged that connection and dealing with the pain of, I did not deserve this. I did not deserve, nobody deserved contracting HIV. And that's the story that I'm trying to let other Latino families know, that when we come and say, hey, I just found out about my diagnosis, we're living so healthy lives right now, but we also need to address that this HIV is still out there. And I want the future generation, Latinos, my nieces, my nephews, to know that we have to come together, and this is how we're gonna end HIV in the future.
Absolutely. Elder Anderson Harvey, one of the reoccurring themes I heard you talk about was not necessarily issues of HIV and AIDS in the South, but issues around our inability as particularly the Black church to unpack sex and sexuality, right? And, personally, I feel like if we cured HIV tomorrow, the Black church would still have an issue around sex and sexuality. Can you talk a bit more about the work that needs to happen, particularly in the South, that's apart from HIV and AIDS, right? Just work around what we as human beings created in the image of God are entitled to, our bodies, and how it is that we can equip faith leaders, but also people of faith who have a certain belief system, who have certain expectations. How can we can equip them to have healthy conversations around sex and sexuality that will then give way to more advocacy for HIV and AIDS in the South?
Yeah, I think, a disclaimer, I believe I come from one of the deepest Christians' faith of being Pentecostal. And so oftentimes what happens is that it's very difficult for us to have conversation as it relates to HIV or any sexual transmitted infections because it evolves around sex. Then we have to open up the doors as it relates to we are preaching in the lack of the words, marriage or fornication and so forth. I think it's a little bit tricky. Oftentimes I have seen where we don't have these conversations, so it makes it feel like that the congregation, no one there is having sex. I don't care if you're married or not. I think the big piece of all of this is wherever our leaders' comfortability is to talk about what is killing us, is that we have to look at that as the Bible say, that God has given us life and life more abundantly. And we are responsible to have these courageous conversations that is needed. So we are aware that one is an empowerment, that we can take control of our own lives as well. I think the challenge is how we are addressing sex. And then when we incorporate this word HIV, which really is heavy stigma in churches. And I think that's the challenge is that, and I've said this often, we tend to stop when we're praying about other elements of infections such as diabetes, hypertension, and so forth, but we never talk about the healing of HIV publicly. And just to incorporate that in our prayers allows our congregation to be curious, to be educated. Why is that being included? Because it's killing us, because we don't talk about it. It's behind closed doors. And if our leaders will just incorporate that, that's a form of education. I think the other piece that oftentimes that we miss is that we do understand that the gospel, tells us that the sickness is not unto death, but it's for God's glory. There are a lot of scriptures in the Christian text that we could really support the nature of healing and the nature of the conversation of HIV and AIDS, the nature of contraction and so forth. We just have to upgrade our hermeneutics and be courageous enough to be able to share that. And, we're in the 21st century and we're 30 years in HIV. There is even curriculum that is out there that will help you to be able to have these conversations. And no matter what faith that you're in, it's the matter of just requesting that information. If we stay silent, then therefore the infection is going to continue to increase in our Black churches, and we're going to continue memorializing people and not calling it for what it is. But we will start then not seeing our congregation being healed enough to go out and then be the gatekeeper of that information, take it back to their social networks so we can all live according to the word. And that's actually being in unity so that we're able to thrive.
Absolutely. I think you answered a question that has been asked in the comments. It was geared toward how it is that we share these messages with faith communities without encouraging behaviors that are not in alignment with our beliefs. And I think you hit the nail on the head just in terms of being able to focus on healing, right? Healing and wellness, which is a tenet that spans across all faiths, right? And so thank you so much for that guidance that I know many people are seeking. William, you talked a bit about the difficulty in transitioning from Puerto Rico to the U.S. South, particularly North Carolina. And having been here now, I know you know that Americans have a healthy level of nationalism about us. Such that we believe everything and everything that we do and everything that we are is better, more inviting than other places, even places for all intents and purposes are part of this country, like Puerto Rico. But I thought it was telling that you explicitly stated that coming from Puerto Rico to North Carolina, you felt more stigmatized as opposed to less. But you also mentioned that some of the laws have since changed. Policy, I think, is a good first step. And Elder Anderson Harvey, I know you spend a tremendous amount of time with the Human Rights Campaign advocating for those life-giving policies. But I'm wondering if you feel as if the culture has changed now that the policies have changed, such that you feel more affirmed in your identity.
So I've been here 7 years now, and I've seen the difference. It's been changing slowly. Also, I'm learning how to navigate here in the South. It was a cultural shock when I came to from Puerto Rico to the South. There's certain phrases and certain, lingo and even food that I'm not, I'm getting used to. And also living in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
It was totally, for me, it threw me off because in Puerto Rico, I feel like we are one community, and we see each other as brothers and sisters, and we're not such. There's the division, but not so you can really see it. Here in the South, it's so common everywhere you go, and even when you go to a church, you can see the difference in how they worship, or and it's changing slowly. But I believe that we need more voices to let people know that, because HIV and sex and faith, it's like a taboo. Sex in religion is a taboo, and unless we start talking about people having sex, you cannot tell a gay Latino person, starting to live, do not have sex, because that's not. So we have to let them know that it's okay living their truth, their life, but also taking the precautions and knowing what's out there, how it can be preventable. There's PrEP, there's other things that it can be done, but not telling them not to have sex. That's not how we're going to end the HIV epidemic in the South.
Do you mind, Ulysses, if I can just piggyback on William real quick on something? And this is a true story, it's a testament, and we're overcomer by our testimonies, and this is why I feel enlightened to share. When I was a young teen, in my transition, I remember going to my parents. My dad is a Pentecostal bishop. My mom was a pastor. And, the one simple question, why can I not have sex before marriage? And what the response I received was, because the Bible says so. We have to start having conversation, because what that did was that led me to find out, since I didn't get an answer from my faith leaders, I went and did it. Now, I didn't die the next day or anything. I mean, of course, I went to the altar and said enough, thank you, Jesus, until I spoke in tongues. And, maybe perhaps that desire went away temporarily. You understand. But at the same time, had they opened up and shared, because when you are perhaps engaging with no commitment, how that grieves your heart when your heart is broken, how there are sexual transmitted infections that can come upon you, and so forth. I say that because when we are asking the relevant questions, we cannot just say because the Bible said so, because many of us are not reading the Bible. Many of us are waiting till Sunday until I quote a scripture, give you 3 points and a benediction, and we sit down. Do you understand? So it's important for us to be able to have the dialogue, to be able to have an open door policy and have those intentional conversations. And if we're going to say because the Bible said so, add some context to it. That is what's going to be relevant that I'm able to understand. I grew up with King James. At that age of answering the question, no scripture in the world that I probably could have comprehended. But had they just shared a little bit of their own life story of how they survived when they were my age, then therefore I probably would not understand even deeper of this epidemic. And shame on, and this is not rebuking my parent, but shame on any leader that have an opportunity to give life and educate so my life can stay whole through holiness, you understand? Then therefore now I can give back, because I don't want somebody else in that situation like I was. because I believe it is our responsibility, and not just the leaders, the laity in conversations, social media, when we're picking up the phone, gossiping about, child, did you see sister so-and-so? All of that, change the narrative, and let's start talking relevant that's going to save our next generation, that's going to save us as well. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we're at the hour now, and I do want to be mindful of people's time, but I also want to hear from you all what are some takeaways for faith leaders, but also from people of faith who might be struggling with how it is they can best engage HIV and AIDS in the South in the context of their faith. I think the documentary ended on a positive note, reminding us that while there's much blame to go around for the faith community, there are also faith actors, people who are doing the work, doing the progressive work to further mitigate HIV and AIDS as a public health crisis. And so I think that's a good note to end on, to say that change is happening. It might be slow change, but change is happening. What else are takeaways for our communities of faith? Kamarian, you gave us some. Latifah, I'd like to hear from you. Just what can people take away from what you all were able to share in the video? Other resources that might be available. What do you want people to leave with?
You know, she just said a word, okay? Because for me, you know, I'm just thinking about, I have young children. I have high school all the way to daycare. And I just think about this next generation and just, you know, kind of to her point, like we have to have these conversations. I'm having uncomfortable conversations with all of my children that I do not want to have. I don't, but I know that I have to have them, because if they don't get it from me, they're going to get it from someone else. And if they've already gotten it from someone else, then I have to come back and, you know, mitigate those whatever information that they got that was wrong. And I think that when you're talking about HIV and AIDS, when you're talking about anything that is affecting our community, the only thing that we are missing that needs to be a consistent thing to do is have the conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter, you know, and educate yourself, listen, make sure that you know what you're talking about and you're giving that information to someone else. But this next generation of children, this next generation of people who are watching us, is very important for us to really have the conversations. And I definitely agree with her 100% that we can't ignore it. We can't act like these things are not happening. Like he said, we can't tell people don't have sex and not give them any information after that. You're just supposed to not do it. Like it's not something that works. It didn't work for us. It's not going to work for the next generation. It didn't work for the generations before either. It was just, you just building more curiosity. And now we have social media, we have the internet, we have all of these avenues for people to get information, whether good, bad, wrong, whatever. It's available. All of it is available. So it's our job as human beings to make sure that we are having the conversations that are just educating those who are around us and whoever, you know, we have to be boots on the ground with this, because it's not going away. And it's not going to go away by ignoring it ever.
That's right. That's right.
So that's my takeaway.
We've seen the consequences of too much information being available without people to help navigate it with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And so we need the faithful to have these conversations in their home, because the next generation, as you mentioned, is going to get the information from somewhere. They're going to get it from somewhere, right? We just want to make sure that it's not misinformation, and that is well informed. Thank you for that. William, what do you want people to take away from this conversation, from the conversation that we had in My Faith, My Story?
To open the channels, to start talking to your kid. Come down to their level and talk and be honest. You know, I think honesty is the best and more powerful thing that you can have. I went through this experience. I don't want you to, you know, just learn from my experiences and be able to be yourself. You know, we need to start talking about HIV in churches. It's something that we really need to start doing. And I know a lot of Latino communities, they're not doing it. They're afraid of talking about that topic. And I invite people to start talking. I know it's a very touchy feeling topic, but their brothers and sisters are living with HIV, and they will really benefit from that communication and that love from your fellow people.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. And Elder Anderson Harvey, you've already given us so many nuggets. Specifically, can you lift up some of the curriculum that you talked about, some of the resources that are already available that people can access? We've seen a number of comments come through asking for resources that they can access to help them start these conversations, to open up the channels in their faith community. Tell us where some people might be able to find those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier you saw all of our wonderful sponsors for this event this evening, all of them from Wake Forest to Gilead to SAC and to RAHMA, all of them is there. There was a project with the NAACP. They had some curriculum that was out. There's plethora of information, that's out there. Universities are also creating their own within their own jurisdictional region that you can tap into. I will say, go back and rewind this video and look at all of those sponsors' welcome and overview of their programs. These are free resources that are available that I think that anyone in any faith community can use, beg, borrow, steal, share them on the thieves, and you can make it your own. And that's important for me to say or whatnot, because I understand that language is different in faith communities and so forth. The final piece that I will say, just as a takeaway, we need to start learning how to empower our communities. I'm from the old school. It was a saying, I believe I'll testify while I have a chance. I may not have that chance any longer. We need to start hearing more from our congregation. Our congregation can teach us a lot, how we can create what is needed in the atmosphere on those Sunday mornings before you give your tithes and offering, before you get on the A flat and start shouting. We can learn a lot. And there are people in our pews that have a testimony and want to share it that we can use to help amplify and also heal others.
Amen. Amen again. I want to thank each of you for your witness, for your vulnerability, for your honesty, for your courage in being a part of this conversation, but also being willing to be vulnerable such that other people might join us in this fight to end HIV and AIDS as a public health epidemic. I also want to share that there have been resources that have been created by Wake Forest University Faith Coordinating Center, which we heard from earlier, specifically for National Faith HIV and AIDS Awareness Day, a faith leader toolkit that we will make sure is available on all of our social media sites. Again, as Elder Anderson Harvey mentioned, they are free. They are available for people to adapt as they see fit. And again, this is just the beginning of what we hope will grow into a curriculum of our own, what we hope will grow into a toolkit. We want to be able to invite more faith perspectives into the conversation. We want to be able to expand this conversation beyond the South, understanding that the South is the epicenter, but we have an epidemic throughout the entire United States. And so this very engagement, this very event will become a resource that you can continue to revisit. It will continue to live on social media and on the internet. And we hope that it has benefited you as much as it has benefited me. And so once again, Latifa, William, Elder Kamarion, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your participation, for your work, for your lived experience, but also for your faith and for your story.
Thank you.
Gracias.
And now, at this time, we will hear from Claudia Lewis, and from her perspective as the videographer of My Faith, My Story, for her firsthand account of what it was like being a part of this project, the creative thought behind it, and the inspiration for which this documentary came together to present to you what you all were just able to see.
And good afternoon, everybody. We're so excited to have with us the director, the producer, the filmmaker of My Faith, My Story, in the person of Claudia Lewis. So good afternoon, Pastor Claudia.
Good afternoon, Carrie. So glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, I am a woman. I am a female. I'll just joking. I am a wife. I am a mother of 7. I am also a licensed local pastor in the United Methodist Church. And obviously, I am a professional videographer and photographer.
Awesome. And so I'm so excited to have had the opportunity we've been working on this project virtually, but I'm one of the fortunate ones that had the opportunity to meet you in person, and your presence is there, and so I appreciate all that you do and all that you are. And so just to dive into this, to talk about this video, what was there anything that you hope to gain from this project going into it?
Well, I wouldn't say that there was anything I wanted to gain in particular, but I just wanted to, first of all, meet new people. I love meeting new people, and I wanted to just have an opportunity to listen and to actually hear the stories and capture those stories in the best way possible. Absolutely.
And your eye is just so spot on. Even prior to, meeting you and working with you on this, had an opportunity to look at some of the previous videos that you've done, and, definitely amazing with your eye. So if you could pinpoint 2 to 3 messages from putting this together, what would they be?
I would say, first of all, that there is a lot of work that still needs to be done in the faith community and accommodating stigmatized demographics. And a couple of messages that I received personally was, first of all, to do a better job of incorporating stigmatized different demographics in your spiritual teaching, in your prayers, as well as in your personal relationships, so that you can have an actual rapport and a better understanding firsthand of the needs of your community. So.
Absolutely. So you're a local pastor in the South. What do you think that faith leaders, especially in the South, could learn from this?
Well, ironically, our ministry is actually doing a sermon series called Facing the Mirror. And one of the things that I hope and that I actually believe will happen by the viewing of this film is that faith leaders will force faith leaders to face the mirror and look at themselves and see, how can I personally do a better job of reaching out and opening up my doors, opening up my arms, opening up my mind, my heart to persons living with HIV, AIDS, or any other stigmatized demographic out there. I believe that it will force or encourage or promote faith leaders to actually face the mirror and look at themselves.
Absolutely. So I think one of the most beautiful things about this is just the opportunity to create the safe space to tell stories. And as a visual storyteller, how do you think, in putting this together, how do you think those stories translated?
I believe those stories translate really well. One thing that I did try to capture is just the authenticity of their actual experiences. To hear these stories, I know for me, it stirred my heart, even as a faith leader. I mean, I felt convicted hearing some of them, and I'm like, what happened? Are you serious? Is this what's going on? And so to see these shared experiences across this demographic and how the emotions surrounding them, I really feel like the emotions will translate very well, or that is my desire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so having, filmed all of this, having edited all of this, having viewed the trailer and the full film in its entirety, if you could give a review, let's take Claudia out of the directorial seat.
Okay.
If you could give this film a review, what would that review be?
Oh, that's a great question.
Put you on the spot.
I believe that it's a difficult question to answer because I know the full story, so I know what's edited out, what's clipped out, and stuff like that. So as far as capturing the story in as concise of a way as I could, I would say that it was to the point, it was direct, and I feel like it did a great job of meeting the goal, which was to bring about awareness and open the door and shed light on these on each individual's personal experiences and bring enlightenment and awareness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll say, I've watched the trailer probably at least 10, 15 times. I got chills every time, especially at the end, when each person stated my faith, my story, because, being there, seeing it, come to life, it definitely spoke to where we are as a people, but also where we need to go. And one of the things that I've been very confident in past is sharing that you can't tell my story like I can tell my story. And
That's
so
right.
I feel as if this film has done a great job of that. So we thank you so much for everything that you've done to get us to this point. Any final words and thoughts?
Faith community, let's do better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to Claudia Lewis from Claudia and Camera. And again, we hope that you really enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you.